Collecting mill surplus firearms. Are you being priced out? You know, the biggest question and problem with this hobby is everyone complains that prices are quite high and it's getting to where the average person cannot afford to enjoy this hobby or collecting. And it's a very complex, difficult thing to address because I mean, you could go off into different venues or whatever. But you have to look at it when it comes to mill surplus. Okay, I think there's two areas, or actually there's three. There will be military firearms made before 1898, okay, which are considered antiques and don't fall under where you need a FFL or a CNR license. Then there's a segment of military firearms from 1898 on, you know, that you do need a CNR. I don't know what the age is now, anything over 50 years or something, there's a list. But I think basically anything designed prior to World War II is CNR eligible. So that means you can get a collector's license and buy and trade that way. And I think that's the vast majority of a lot of people out there, especially guys on YouTube that are collecting in that, fall into that category. Then there is military style firearms, okay? They're not actually mill surplus because from the late 50s on, most standard infantry guns are selective fire. So you must get a specially made firearm that was not issued to the military, but is a military style firearm. What am I talking about? Very popular AR-15. Okay, AR-15, M1A1s, AK-47s of every type and variant. There are a lot of different firearms made in semi-automatic only that are a military style gun, much like this. And we'll get these out of the way. Price volatility on weapons in this category. They are not military issue. In other words, you know, the Army didn't use this gun and, you know, sell it used later on. Like, you know, we get the term military surplus firearms. These are so volatile, okay? Back, say, 15 years ago, all right? An AR-15 from a reputable company, you know, a brand name. Some of them around, some of them around, Bushmaster, whatever. They're about $700, okay? An AK-47 was about $3.5, $4, and because of political change of regimes, or when Obama came into office, everyone was freaking out. They figured the minute he got elected, he's going to put in a gun law and ban these. So everyone went speculatively, okay, bought these up. I was in a gun shop. They're $700 some a piece. The guy walks in, he went to a bank, took out a loan. Said, do you have any AR-15 rifles? And the guy in the store goes, yeah, I have this here. I think it was like a Bushmaster or something. He goes, how much are they? And he goes, like 700 or 700 something. He goes, how many do you have? And he goes, I have 3 of these in stock. He said, I want to buy all 3 of them. Okay? Because this guy thought that the minute the election results came, the Democrats got in office, they're going to ban these guns. They're going to be put on a ban list. Never happened. And I went to the gun show 1 year, 2 years later, and all these guys are there with these guns brand new in the box, trying to wander around out of the trunk of their car and that, hey, do you want to buy this? And what actually happened is they sold all these guns, nothing happened, and then after about 6 months when they got caught up with production, the guns were retailing for about a little over $600. So now these guys got screwed. They paid $700 for these guns. And now, 2 years into the thing, the retail price dropped. Okay, and this has happened more than once. Worse than the stock market. People lose their ass on these. Then we had a unfortunate massacre. Again, the guns are about $6.5, $7. Overnight, $1,300 a piece they're paying for this, say the same gun at retail at $675. Okay, people are buying them like crazy. They know they're going to change the laws. These are going to be banned. They're going to be valuable. A year and a half later, the price dropped down to $500 and some dollars. And in the end, before it all happened, you know, AR-15s, generic guns, were down to $400 at one time prior to COVID. Okay, they kind of maybe went up a little. Excuse me. During COVID, there was quite a panic. The guns did go back up from the $400 mark to about $700, $800. Okay, and everything got weird. And then now they're back down into the $425 range for a generic gun. So, moral of the story is, don't get caught up, don't get greedy, and that's how that segment of it all works. Now, oh, I almost forgot to mention the AK-47. I am reviewing one of those. The AK-47, like I said, was always not as expensive as the AR-15. Okay, and the reason is there were a lot of foreign imports. And they changed the laws in this time to where they kind of banned the imports or made it more difficult for them to come in. And actually, AK-47s are more expensive than AR-15s at this current day. You know, and it's just a matter of fact. They go well over 1K, okay, for really good examples. You can find some down around 800 or so, U.S. made ones, but you know, the ones I'm testing are not bad for that price point. You know, yeah, I can get a nicer one or something that is made a little bit sturdier or with wood instead of just the plastic stocks and that on there. But you know, you're looking over a K, and I really don't believe, you know, personally, and see, this is where you get the conflict in this hobby. Personally, I don't think AK-47 should be that expensive. And there's a multitude of reasons. Manufacturing, what you have to do to build them is not very compliant to CNC type manufacturing. Okay, there's a lot of hand fitting and things that have to be done that are more or less an older technology that doesn't mesh well with modern manufacturing practices. Okay, and that kind of adds to the cost, but that's just the way it is. Now, the vast majority of people are into like old Mausers and all this other stuff, or, you know, 303 British Enfields, Mausers, a whole assortment of bolt-action rifles, or some semi-automatic guns that throughout the years have come. This was the mainstay, and back in the 80s and 90s, all of these World War II style guns that were in reserves were dumped onto the market and available at fairly, what we look at now as really dirt cheap was kind of not the way it was. And I have a typical example here. This French Mas, 1936. Okay, when these came in, they were about $70, wrapped in wax paper. And when I went to a gun show in Syracuse, now this is before the internet, you were tripping all over these things, okay? And they had a ton of ammo from Syria or Egypt or something. So a case of ammo was dirt cheap. The gun was under $100. Now, a good Argentine Mauser or Brazilian Mauser, and there was a whole assortment of them. Some were even in a 30-06 caliber, 7mm, and they ranged anywhere from almost mint to, excellent condition. There were a lot of decent guns out there, good bores, everything. Okay, those went. You're looking about $125 at the time for a nice one. You can get mediocre ones maybe for around $100 or something. The bores were kind of worn or something, but there were no dark shot out bores or anything. Swedish Mausers also, they were a little bit more expensive. They might have been $140 or something. But they were nice guns, and all of them were in nice shape. Okay? But you have to remember also that back in those days, I don't think I was taking home $300 a week. Okay? So for me to kind of go out, I'd save up my money. It was every 6 months. I would go and buy $300-400 worth of rifles at a gun show, and that's how I built my collection. Okay. Now I remember they had a shipment of Mosin and Gans with the sniper scopes, sniper guns, and they were $350, which I thought was a little steep at the time. Okay, now it's not, but at that time, there was a lot of money. You're talking, that's about, I showed up with 3.5, 4 to the gun show, and I usually picked up, anywhere from 3 to 4 things. Brand new SKS rifle with a sling and all this other stuff that was Chinese marked with the arsenal and that was $180. Okay? And those varied. That's another gun that went up to 3.5 when they passed the ban back there in the 90s. Them guns went up, they were $350, and once they sold out, and I don't think they weren't in the ban because they didn't have a detachable magazine, but they went up. Then when they decided to cut off all the guns from China, they went down. And the Chinese brought them in, and you could buy different versions, whether they were actual SKSs or that weird pin barrel cheap thing that looked like an SKS. Those are under $100 a piece. People bought dozens of them. And then later on they would go up into the $700-800 range, which right now I have no idea. I know somebody was complaining the Yugoslavs, which those were, they're a little bit heavier duty with the grenade launcher built in, and I remember they were about 2.5, 3 at one time when they brought them in quantity years ago, and I never did pick one up. They go for about $600 now. So, that's just the long and short of it. They're not going to bring, large quantities of this gun in. They're not going to bring in large quantities of Lee Enfields. And if they do, they're in real piss poor condition. Okay, like I said, you're not restoring a gun. A lot of these guys are resurrecting a gun. I mean, it's difficult. And I understand, you don't like shelling out at an auction. I've seen where they go for 400 or 500, 600, some of them, depending on what model and date and condition. But they do go for quite a bit of money. So you ask yourself, is this hobby getting to where, we're not going to go on with it? Then we go back past the CNR stuff. We go into the antiques. Okay, now Royal Tiger's been dumping a bunch of stuff out on the market, stuff you haven't seen in quantity in 50, 60 years. Okay, the old Italian Vetterlis, even the ones in 6.5. But the condition of these guns is deplorable. Even I kind of lucked out with the Russian Baradin that I bought, but again, I paid, half a grand for it, but it's sawed off. It's still rifle. I have to true up the muzzle in it, and I probably could fire it. Okay, but again, this is hit or miss. Okay, and a lot of people do buy these weapons from them because, like I showed you with my Austrian 1888-90, I paid a pretty good chunk of money for that gun, and you can never fire it, and there were parts missing off of it. Where if I went another $200 in an auction recently, I actually have a firearm that's complete. Some questions about whether it was put together or something, and that. But it is the correct model. It is complete, and it has, for an antique, pristine bore, which is shootable, is what I wanted. So as far as I'm concerned, and another guy told me the amount of money I put into that gun was $300 too much. Okay. I looked for 8 years to find one, and I found one, and I want it for my own personal satisfaction. And, even though, okay, so what am I going to wait, another 8 years till I can find one at the price point that he said? Okay, and I got one that I wasted my money on that's more or less a wall decoration. Okay, that was $5 something, all right? So this is where you got to make your choices. Now I'll make some videos to explain how you can go out and do this sensibly, and I'll give you advice on how to go to online auctions. Because if you're the type of person that you just want to order it from a website or find it in a listing, like Royal Tigers, you go to the website and it's listed there and just buy it, that is going to start becoming a thing of the past, okay? Because there's fewer and fewer of these firearms coming in. Mostly handguns, like the Bulgarian Makarovs. You'll see, like I bought the Czech CZ82, these Cold War handguns. There's still some of them filtering in, okay? And I even seen some Chinese Tokarevs, which, I don't know how they got into the country, but there were some of them, a smattering of them, and the Yugoslavian M70s, which I kind of suggest if you do run across one of them, grab one of them before that dries up. And once these supplies are gone, much like the Polish P64s and P83s, which were somewhat commonplace, I believe that they've gotten all of them out of the reserves or whatever and sold them off as obsolete as they re-equipped their armed forces and police forces with a different handgun, more modern. So, eventually the supply will cut off. I do still see Swiss rifles coming in and sporadically, and the price kind of backed off on them too. Okay, so that's still another venue to look into in this time period, the Swiss guns. Now when we go back to the antiques, okay, I don't know if I already said that, but when we go in there, Royal Tigers got a bunch of them from that pile, and I guess there's a ton of them because they just keep making more trips and bringing more and more of this stuff back. A lot of automatic weapons that are being cut up into parts kits too, okay, which that, may be something for you. That's something unique that nobody else is offering. So there are things there that you're not going to find nowhere else, and that's the only choice you got. I kind of don't like getting into it with them, and I've kind of had my fill with it. So Hunter's Lodge. There's people that do a ton of business, make videos, show you the stuff they're getting out of Hunter's Lodge, but waiting 3 months and trying to communicate with them, and these people don't put forth an effort. I decided the things I was interested in to get them, and yes, they cost more, double maybe, but the condition, no screwing around, and I got them. I got them for the collection. That's it. You know, that, again, that's up to you. If you want to do the reconstruction type stuff, and if you're into that and you like it, yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, for me, it's aggravating, and you know, I like to actually shoot the guns too. So, you know, the antique ones, that's another thing. You go there, they're hard to find. Something like Verndl rifles, okay, they have not been imported in years. They're around, and they're getting up close to a nice one. You can find some beat up ones and screwed up ones and rusted to hell down there, but you're still looking at about a grand for a good Verndl or a good trapdoor. Now, trapdoors are quite common, and they've gone up. The demand, popularity for them. You know, I was buying them at one time, and it's a tricky field. And, you know, if you're into that type of stuff, the only good thing is you can buy them and get them mailed to you directly, at least in this state. Most of them, I think, Jersey and New York, you got to have an FFL take an antique. And then, if you're into the modern reproductions of them, you know, Pedersoli makes the rolling blocks. You can get Remington rolling blocks. You can get the fuck are they? Sharps replicas, either the black powder ones or the cartridge ones. You know, if you're into that classic era of single shot, long range shooting with vernier sights and that, you know, they're available too. Okay, but they'll cost you. Or you can just getting actual Civil War period guns. I have one or two originals. That's another field that was popular, but a lot of these people that were into that are older and dying off, so that's not as lucrative as a field. There are still a lot of reenactors that would like to get their hands on an original firearm, and that's about the only way that collecting or usage or value is there. And even with the repros, if you're into that Civil War era, the repros, some of the repros are no longer made. Okay, Colt Patterson I had, those things go for well over $1,000. Okay, and they're a reproduction pistol. It's just these companies are no longer making them. Those, and what is that one there? Or any of the LeMat revolvers. I don't believe they're being currently made. Those go for well over $1,000. They were quite expensive back when they were in production. And my favorite, the Spencers and Rogers revolver. Nobody makes them anymore. They're a solid gun. I bought one because they were made up there in New York, in Willowvale. And I bought one of those back in the late 80s, and you know, that's actually gone up in value, and it's a friggin' repro. All right, and it was expensive. You could get an 1860 with a steel frame for, you know, just under $200 at the time or something. If you catch a sale, like at Cabela's or something like that, and that gun cost me just about $300 back then. You know, but to me it was well worth it. I could have got an original, okay, that I've seen somebody had back then, but they wanted a little over $1,000 for it now. I don't know what an original one would go for at this point in time. So, as you see, the prices are high, and there's no way around it. Okay, I'm not going to get into all the reasons why, but prices have gone up, and if you're interested in this field, it's going to cost you some money. So the best thing to do is I will give you advice on different things. I've made videos talking about this subject in the past, that, you know, you got to know what they're worth. You have to understand condition, okay, and that, and where you can find these. And like I said, if you're just looking to go to a place that has a bunch of them and just order it, that's going to be a difficult thing to do. You have to learn the ins and outs of this hobby, of how to hunt down the stuff, know what you're looking at, and then try to find a venue to get it at the most reasonable price that you can. And I will cover this in different videos, the ins and outs of online auctions. That's pretty tough. I've just bought several guns through them, and you take a beating money-wise, really bad. The added, the hammer price is one thing. Say these guns are going for X amount of money, and you're like, man, I really don't want that. So you get in this auction, you run the bid up to where you feel comfortable, and the hammer price comes down, you're saying, okay, that's cool. But if you're like in the $600 range, by the time it's said and done with shipping, handling, fees, sales tax, which you were not charged years ago, your $600 some odd dollar bid ends up costing you $9. Okay, when it's all said and done. Okay, that's why a lot of these auction houses, and I mean, they have raised their rates up a lot in, say, the past 5 years. When I would buy something 5-6 years ago, the percentages and the cost for shipping and that's where it kills you. So yeah, you have to come up with a strategy. You have to figure out what you're willing to pay. Have your money ready. If something pops up, it's best to have like a little reserve for you even start looking. Make sure that you're liquid and able to move if something comes your way that's going to work out for you. See, tips like that. And I'll go into that more as in other videos, talking about auctions. I may even make one about how to liquidate your firearms, and things of that nature. Alright, hit the like button, subscribe, and stay tuned.